Foundation, one of the main things, main platforms has been the Foundation for European Progressive Studies. It's quite a think tank. It does research and creates programs and manages them, but at the same time provides a network for national think tanks. So I think there's a twofold task in that sense: bring the thinking intellectual people together to a joint problems. And Kalevi Sorsafoundation has had its traditional policy and research day in November, always with FEPS, and with FEPS has been one of the, let's say, prime movers in creating, in this way, European debate also in Helsinki. And on the other hand, we are not just on the receiving end, we try to provide also, give our efforts to the joint European debate, and we are also present at the Call to Europe conference, which is in now is the third or fourth time in June in Brussels, so we try to be present also there. But the prime mover of FEPS has been from the beginning our next speaker, General Secretary Ernst Stetter, and I give you the floor on your topic, renewable, social, democratic and progressive politics in Europe. Please, Ernst.
Okay, thank you very much, Mikko. I think it's always a wonderful pleasure. I have to just first to manipulate if this is working well. Yes, a wonderful pleasure to be here in Helsinki. And of course, when you prepare and you think you're going to Helsinki, you think first of all with whom I share the conference, and secondly, as a European think tank on progressive thinking, I'm always thinking also what is the state of the Social Democratic Party here in Finland. And I was very happy to have a short chat before the conference with the chairman of the Social Democrats, and he said me that you are improving very, very much in the last year, and this is a very, very good sign. And I think also we have to see in which way such a mood in one of the countries can also brought to other countries in Europe. But to be perfectly honest, in a way, when you prepare also, you think for sure, and everybody has mentioned that on Helsinki, you think on the beautiful city of Helsinki, and I'm very happy also to be in summer here and not always in winter when it's cold. But on the other side, you think also on something which is very popular, I think, here in Helsinki, and you have to think on Tove Jansson, and you have to think on the brilliant Moomins. And these are stories, I think, they have been written in the times when it was not so nice, but there are stories of hope, there are stories of belief, and there are stories of the amazing place what the world is so around. And when these thoughts made me think of all the quotes that I may recall from this literature, I have chosen perhaps two that will guide my presentation today. The first one is from the answer of Snufkin to Moomin Papa upon the question, what is happening in the world? To which Snufkin replies, fuss and mystery. That will probably be the feeling while I'll be touching upon the difficulties we had at hand. But as Tove Jansson, I will finish on another note, providing some concrete ideas on how to emancipate ourselves from the predicament. And with that, I hope to embody the quote of her from the Moominland Winter, which is, all things are so very uncertain. And that's exactly what makes me feel reassured. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we are at the moment, and we have to say the state of the play of European social democracy is quite worse at the moment. And it's the worst, I have to say, also in the last 70 years, hence in the entire post-war history. And this slide is showing, it's from The Economist, is showing a bit our share, our weighted share of votes in Western Europe And you see, we had a very stable period from the 50s to the 70s. We had an up period from the 70s to the 2000s. And then when the crisis started in 2008, it went extremely down in a way. The system, I think we have also, well, there's another slide I will show you. This is a bit the point in which way we are under pressure. You see a bit with the red colors, the share of social democratic parties in governments in the national elections from the 86, 96, 26, and 2016. So it's becoming not more red, it's becoming less red in a sense. This is a real bad picture we have. In the system, we are at the moment, I think, the problem is one, we have to be in a kind of a two-partisan system, bipartisan. It has lost, the social democracy had lost the position to be of minimum the second largest parliamentary party. Moreover, it finds itself in a position, social democracy, where its traditional political priority are becoming also its liability. This concerns exactly and intensively the welfare system that is being under pressure. Cuts and attacks, it's no longer that it can no longer deliver the movement. And this is also concerns the pro-European approach, whereby the European Union is seen as a drowning and its own incapacity to stand up to the challenges that it is facing. And this is also dividing our movement when we talk on the migrant crisis, when we talk on the issue of how to share this problem and this concern, that the movement itself is divided. In that respect, European social democracy is in its kind of a transitional moment. The post-war history saw social democracy evolving from a movement closely related to trade unions and workers' organizations into a parliamentary and often also in a governmental party. In that sense, social democracy has become a part of the system, the very same one that is so many contested now in these days. This is a real concern of social democracy at the moment. While transforming its structures on the wave of the professionalization and the medialization of politics, social democracy has perhaps lost the natural connection, and here it also started drifted in terms of whom it wanted to mobilize or wanted to represent. The historical social democratic movement used to be one and has to be one core idea which was built up a socialist or a social democratic society. This has been changed in the 70s. This ideal was replaced in programmatic documents, Godesberger Programm is one example, with the objective to build a society based on basic values, on equality and solidarity. It would seem that a tangible translation of what that means is missing at the moment. And that is also one of the reasons, I think, social democracy is losing in times when political competition is first and foremost on ideas, and that is what predefines the large volatility of our electorate at the moment in Europe. Social democracy is suffering from the crisis regarding also the leadership. The current generation, and forgive me if I'm saying this, of leaders across the European Union has perhaps one thing in common, and that's their CV. With the exception of some, for example, Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, most of them have been active in the youth, student politics, and served as political assistants, and then step by step approached the high circles, in which they were recruited for leadership the moment the party lost elections. That is why sometimes and often the current generation of leaders not come with a new generational agenda to answer its times, to quote our dear German former leader Willy Brandt. But it's rather simply the next in succession. And this is not attracting a lot the electorate. In that sense, we are in a situation that we have, on the European level, we are in a situation that we have enormous problems, and these problems are seen nearly daily in the press. For example, The Economist is saying, concerning PASOK, they have disappeared. I don't know if they have premises here anymore. A Greek docker has said this on PASOK. Or online website Media Spike says, social democracy is dying, even in Sweden. Or Der Spiegel, Hintern hochgenossen, get up comrades, on explaining all the problems we are facing in SPD in Germany. Or Süddeutsche Zeitung, ein Ruck muss durch die SPD gehen. There has to be a real effort concerning Social Democratic Party. Or we are saying on foreign policy, a very well-known and renowned journal, it's the end of French socialism as we know it. And I can go on and go on. Last quote, France's chaos stems from its failure to adapt to globalization. These are quotes which are coming nearly daily in all the press all over Europe. And this is also a problem we are facing in a way that we have not a positive mood in the press at the moment. On the European level, Social Democrats have become also hostages of the often unfortunate Grand Coalition. This means that they are associated with both unpopular and also wrong decisions, for example, regarding austerity, as also they are seen as part of the group that has steers in their hands but fails to steer Europe really out of the trouble. Some of their opinions are even harsher, seeing Social Democrats as part of those who mismanaged the post-crisis times and failed to punish effectively those who caused the 2008 crisis. On the national level, and this is my first little cartoon, governments' constellations seem to be serving in that way. Grand coalition are the source of frustrations, of which we have just recently seen this in Austria 2 weeks ago. Similar to the Social Democratic Party of Austria, SPÖ, also SPD finds itself in a very bad situation, whereby there is no single week without press foretelling the end of the Social Democratic Party of Germany. Although this is for sure, and this is not my belief, it's too much, and there are good things also that the Grand Coalition governments are doing. But it seems that this is rather be taken as granted, or it's seen as a kind of a question that is needed. This is the question, for example, of the minimum wage we have in Germany. This has been as granted. Then we have the other situation in Europe that we are sometimes in minority governments. Minority governments like in Sweden, also facing not very nice times, as people wish reforms to be on a faster track than they are nowadays, especially that the negotiation processes seem to take forever, while the reality changes rapidly in every instance. Hence, for example, Stefan Löfven policies are solid, are in solidarity, and are sustainable in their design. Still, his government is not ranking high in terms of popular support. It is also being trapped from time to time, of which we saw the expressive case whilst he had to negotiate his budget. Thirdly, we are in a situation that some social democratic parties are single majority parties. This is the case after the very, very glorious victory in 2012 of François Hollande and the Parti Socialiste en France. They have won the election under the slogan, Le changement maintenant. This has raised huge expectation, bar too high for the president and also for the government to actually reach it. To that end, the crisis and diverse pressures prompted the reforms, which as President Hollande claims, were necessary to adjust a kind of an old-fashioned welfare state in France. But they are vastly unpopular. And it has especially visible in the last weeks when thousands and thousands went on the streets to protest against the labor reforms. Then we have a fourth situation where, well, this is not yet, but we have a situation where perhaps there is a lot of hope now. This is Portugal. There has been the left bloc situation. For the first time this year, there has been a government formed on the left. Well, we have to see if this is an example this can deliver, and we have also to see if they have the time also to bring in new kind of policies. And finally, we have a very, very worrying situation. This is my first cartoon, where it's the case in the Netherlands, it's the case in Greece, it's the case in Hungary, it's the case in Poland, where parties are either barely or no longer even in parliament. It is a shame that in Poland, our progressive party, the SLD, is not yet anymore represented in the Sejm. This is not acceptable, I think, for the movement, but it happened in that way. And it's also frustrating that in Greece, for example, all of a sudden a party who was PASOK, who had more than 40% of the votes, is now about 8 or 9% in the parliament and represented not anymore correctly. So, I will say that in that sense, we have the problem that European social democracy seems to have lost, to a certain way, also a character to be an ambitious party movement. Of course, it is hard to believe and continue being enthusiastic when the picture of social democracy is as doomed as it is. However, perhaps the malaise, the uncertainty, and the disbelief are in fact core reasons for which center-left is where it is nowadays. Social democracy used to be a movement that pleases people to believe that another, a better, a fairer future for all is possible. This is the first thing that it needs to re-establish in order to survive. Especially that there are many others who talk about alternatives, starting from the ultra-globalist movements in the 90s, finishing with the 99% movements quite recently, or some of new left-wing, newly movements coming up like Podemos in Spain. That means that on the one hand, it raises the expectations, on the other, it defines the change via prospect of the minima. Surely, the minimum standards are relevant, but they not respond to the aspirations people have and rights they want to enjoy. It is also the case in the Grand Coalition, where often only minimum changes are implemented after big promises in the campaigns, and when it enters in coalition, it cannot be realized. Because of the crisis, also social democracy is faced with two debates. The first one concerns for sure what is the way out of the crisis. It's more or less focused on management, and it's focused on in which way we can reboot the economy. The second one is there is a huge debate, and last week there was a big conference in Sweden, in Stockholm, on the way, was the third way wrong? Was the policies and the politics done by Tony Blair and the others in the 90s, was this a failure, and has this brought us to the mess we are? I think both arguments are not enough to carry on forward. The first one, because it does not offer an answer what role social democracy envisage for itself when the era of prosperity is perhaps over, and when it is possible to regulate relationships within the post-industrial financial capitalist reality. We are a single national government has not the structure to regulate that. We have seen this very clearly when we started, right after the crisis, the question of introducing the financial transaction tax. It was the idea of the European social democratic movement. When we look nowadays, where is the financial transaction tax? We could could have perhaps helped to come out to a certain extent, to raise money. Well, it's somewhere. We don't know if it's implemented or if the current financial transaction tax proposal is implemented. This is far away from that what was thought to be done. So the competition issue, I think Gesine has already talked a lot on that. It's the competition for the office. The social democratic parties de-emphasize their efforts to attract new members, and this is a bit the diagram which I'm showing here. The process is in a way that we are at the moment in nearly all the countries at the stake that we can only mobilize our own electorate, and even this is going down. So finally, is there still time to rescue and to be a new kind of a movement? And I think it's possible to change the course with a number of ideas which I would like to bring forward. First of all, it's the framework, the ideological framework. Instead of complaining what I said about the third way, the debates we did not have or the things we did not do, we need, in our sense, what we have also so far researched within FEPS, to change the focus from the past into the future in the direction that it must take, imposing on a certain degree of intellectual discipline to seize the perspective of not only the next electoral round, but of a generation ahead. This is what we as FEPS, together with our think tanks, would like to do with our FEPS Next Left reflection process. Secondly, I think we have clearly to discuss the socio-economic paradigm. We must understand that the model that was built after the Second World War and was reformed in the 90s while trying to deal with the globalization is not the one which is at the moment at the hand. This one sees to be detaching the financial and the social, so-called real economy. We have seen this very clearly during the crisis and in which way we thought to come out of the crisis. Let me just quote British Labour Party under Miliband always saying, there is no alternative. They lost the elections because they were seen as the light austerity party. So we have to debate what is the new paradigm, the socio-economic paradigm. I was very happy that we have brought in the digitalization, but it's not only about digitalization, it's not only about green economy, it's not only about, let's say, reindustrialization. We cannot discuss this separately. We have to come to a kind of a all-over new socio-economic paradigm. This must be, in a sense, bringing together all these kind of new developments in the economic realities of globalization to formulate a clear paradigm of our economic policies we want like to reinvent. In that sense also, I'm very happy, I do a bit of publicity also for FEPS for sure, that we are currently working together with Joe Stiglitz on a book called Rewriting the Rules of the European economy. The third thing I think we should have in mind is the way how of organizing ourselves. We have to accept that the society have changed and that the people, especially the younger generation, the millennials, they have different approach to politics and engagement. In a survey we have now conducted with more than 20,000 millennials all over Europe, but also abroad in the US, in Canada, in Africa now. I was just coming back last week from Johannesburg, where we have launched the Millennial Dialogue there. We have seen that regarding the attitudes, regarding the dreams, but also regarding the needs of young people across the globe, that they want to engage. They want to engage them, and that is a condition also for social democrats to stop declining in numbers. We have to engage the young generation. But we must understand that the ideological, responsible, and straightforward politics is not all out of fashion in a way. This is why we need to rethink on how we do policies and have to find ways to make things possible. Instead of explaining to people that things cannot be realized, they are impossible, there is no alternative, we have to go with cuts, we have to do this kind of terrible austerity policies. On the other side, what comes out of this survey we have done is something which is surprising, but it's a very good example in which way we can perhaps enhance again and engage again young people. This is the question of the welfare state, which for years has been described by a lot of the politicians that is unappealing to the younger generations. And the survey shows very clearly the contrary. Young people stick on the welfare state, take it as something that they are entitled to benefit from and wish to expand, especially in terms of, for sure, education, but most surprisingly also in terms of procurement of public goods, of health care. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, you can imagine that in all the surveys all over Europe, more than 90% of the millennials are saying they are concerned about the healthcare system in their societies. And we have, as social democrats, often abandoned it. We have given this to the private industry. We have privatized healthcare. The same goes for education. For sure, this is the young generation. They need and they want to have better education. This is their hope for the future. And they are concerned about the way how in a lot of countries, education, high fees, not very, very nicely, how the universities are run, not modernized, and so on. So I feel with the younger generation, what is the message of the younger generation of that is, well, let us rethink also questions of our welfare states in the sense how we can offer something as social democrats on the procurement of public goods for our younger generation. And perhaps in that sense we can regain also some votes and some new members. One other thing, a new way of thinking about the political battleground. We need to stop to talk always, well, on the middle of the class, on the left, we should move on to in order to gain the electoral majority. It is clear that in the modern societies, this is not perhaps anymore the battle we have to do. We have to win majority for sure, but on the contrary, we have also to look a bit at the new dimensions in the political conflicts we have at the moment. This is essential to get out from the defensive position which places social democrats at the side of the contested elite system. The system and anti-system divide social democracy can only lose from, which we have seen in Austria, which we have seen in the context of the referendum in Scotland, and nonetheless we are likely to see it in the upcoming general election in Spain, and also, for sure, in the context of the EU referendum in the UK. Unless we redefine the rules of the political game, we may share the fate of those who did not and became a history on the course of unavoidable transformation of the partisan system. A vivid example of it is what happened with the liberal parties, for sure. One of them, at the time when neoliberalism took up, they thought this is their era. But what happened? The effective advocate of neoliberalism became the conservative parties in Europe. And so the liberal parties are facing a real problem at the moment. Other point, I think, a way forward is the political competition. There is no need for social democrats to define themselves always in competition to the others. And Gesine has also talked a bit on the question of competition in our societies. For sure we are in competition, but that means that there is no need neither enter into debates that are initiated in a manner that contradicts all of the basic rules of democratic culture of respect for each and everyone. To that end, there is also no ethical excuse for competing on the grounds that are morally wrong, such as hostility, such as racism and xenophobia in our societies. As European social democrats, we are not declining because we are anti-systemic, because of the anti-systemic, the populist or the extremist or the left radical parties are on the rise. No, because the Social Democrats are in decline, but they are on the rise because the Social Democrats are on the decline. These new movements, they are growing up because we have not found the real answer. What that means is that Social Democrats must define themselves alongside their own agendas and not alongside the commentaries of what they are not. As the migration crisis, especially in the South and Central Europe, as also attempts to scrap women's rights abuse in Spain or Poland showed, people do cherish and express solidarity towards one another. One should focus how to channel this and make it mainstream instead of focusing how to respond to the marching that don't. And lastly but not least, the governing agenda. Next to the framework on the ideology, the socio-economic paradigm, new ways of organizing and new ways of thinking about the political battleground and of political competition, we need also to define a clear governing agenda. It must be, in a sense, multi-layered. And as much as it should focus on the national level priorities, it must also define what the aspirations is regarding the European Union and the future of the European Union. Center-left must take this as a kind of a core issue. Europe cannot survive in going back to national entities. The only way to go forward is that we unite, that we go forward in that path which have started 60 years ago after the Second World War. And this is the only way how we can survive also in that globalized society. So we need to enhance a new debate also on a training, on a pedagogy of the reforms concerning the European Union. For sure, we cannot claim anymore this question of peace or so. On the other side, it's still the thing that since European Union has been created, there was no single person shot in a war amongst the Europeans. But on the other side, we are facing a lot of problems on the organizing in which we are organized on the European level. And I think social democracy has to reinvent this paradigm concerning the European Union. In that way, I will conclude with perhaps some guidelines. I think we have to find one sentence, which is always a very, very stimulating thing. What is the prior mission of European social democracy at the moment? We have to break out of our defense position and create a politics of identity and not politics of ideology. We have to aim a real new socio-economic paradigm, which is rational, emotional, and is also connect with the modernity and what you said on digitalization. This is one thing we have to endorse in that way. We should be seen as, and this is the crisis showing us, that European social democracy is the main fighter against the rising inequalities. And we should clearly renew our movement. We should embrace a new way to attract and empower the members in the way that the party speaks for, on behalf, and through its members. This is something which is sometimes really forgotten within our movements. And reclaiming the leadership in making a difference to the others is also something sometimes which was not done in the last 10, 15 years. Doing politics and not simply thinking we have to win the next elections to be in government. Sometimes people are saying, well, they only want their post and guarding their post, but we should offer alternatives. And last but not least, as a European and as a convinced European, we have to go forward with the process of the European integration with all the problems we are facing. I thank you very much for your attention.